Hi guys, this is Cupcake and today we are going to be looking at plane design, specifically the Storm Advanced Trainer. We're going to be looking at how to fly it and how to build it. This is going to be quite a long video, so I suggest you make sure you have plenty of snacks and fluids on hand and just get yourselves settled in. Now the Storm is part of a 3 aircraft family which also includes the Squall Light Trainer and the Vortex SSTO, the latter of which I will cover in a separate tutorial. Now, out of all my aircraft designs, I have to say that the Storm is probably the best all-rounder. It's very capable at high altitudes or low altitudes, it's extremely manoeuvrable, and it looks gorgeous, which, let's be honest, is always a plus point. Now, before we get too far ahead, you will need a couple of mods for this tutorial. The first one is called Pilot Assist, and the second one is Editor Extensions, links to which can be found in the description. Oh, and if you haven't got one already, I also highly recommend investing in a joystick. Now the Storm weighs in at 3 tons and is comprised of only 25 parts. There are 2 models available, the standard edition which you can see here. There's also a dual seat rescue edition which has an integrated probe core. This allows you to rescue up to 2 Kerbals from anywhere on Kerbin. The craft is well at home, landing and taking off from water, which is good news if you have some Kerbals which touch down in the drink. Anyway, I shall now attempt to demonstrate a water landing. Maybe I'll try that again. So there you have it folks, you can even operate this plane underwater if you so desire. Now as you guys probably realise, I've only got into plane design relatively recently. I never really used to bother with planes before, firstly because the old stock aero model was pretty terrible, let's be honest. And also I wasn't really sure what cool new designs or innovations I could kind of bring to the world of KSP planes. There were so many cool designers out there already. Anyway, sorry, we're getting a bit off topic here. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to take this plane, which, let's remember, only weighs 3 tons and has 160 units of fuel, and I'm going to show you how to fly it all the way around Kerbin without refueling. So, if you haven't already, download the Storm, install it in your KSP folder, and let's open it up. Now to make things a bit more exciting, let's get rid of the external drop tank, and we're going to rely exclusively on the plane's internal stores. So first things first, just board your Kerbal and activate the SAS. We can now close the cockpit doors by pressing 0 and activate the Pilot Assist mod by clicking on the aircraft icon. Before we take off, we just want to set our heading to 90 degrees and our altitude to 15,000 meters. We're just entering the values for now, we're not going to activate the autopilot mod quite yet. Anyway, we'd better get going. Hit full throttle and stage once. Wait till the speed builds up to around 100 meters per second and then pull back gently on the stick. Now we're up in the air, fold in the landing gear and we're aiming for a pitch of 45 degrees. Let's also pin the engine information as that'll be quite useful to have up. Now we're up and running, we can start activating the autopilot. So click where it says target heading and the computer will hold our course at 90 degrees. As we pass 5,000 meters, we can just start pitching down and building up a bit of speed. As we gain altitude, our engine is putting out less thrust, which means we've gone from a projected 15-minute flight time at sea level to over 1 hour now. As we get to 15,000 meters, I'm just going to start leveling off, and I'll shortly activate the autopilot by clicking on the target altitude button. A little trick we can do to make the craft even more efficient is to actually deactivate the rear control surfaces. This has the effect of reducing the pitch and therefore the drag of the craft. This also makes it a bit easier for the AI to fly the plane if you're using pilot assist or even mech jab, as you can get oscillations otherwise if the control surfaces are activated. Now I want to point out that even though we've leveled off, our projected flight time is still increasing. This is because we're getting ever closer to the engine's maximum speed, so essentially the faster we go, the less fuel we burn. Anyway, there's not much left to do except enjoy the views, so we're going to let the AI just fly the plane, and I'm going to take you guys back to the spaceplane hangar and show you how the Storm was put together. As I mentioned before, you're going to have editor extensions installed, otherwise it's impossible to build this plane. So starting with the cockpit, let's start adding the control and lifting surfaces. By pressing the C key, we can set the snapping to 90 degrees, so all of those surfaces are going to be dead centered when we place them. A handy feature of editor extensions is the fact that there are no offset limits, so we can just get these parts out of the way for now until we're ready to finally attach them. Next up, let's add the refueling port, which we can center by pressing the V key. We're going to attach the engine now, and it's important that we don't put it on the node. We want to surface attach it to the end of the fuel tank by pressing the T key. Mounting the engine this way means we've got a node free at the front to mount the circular intake. As we mount the control surface that's going to act as our rudder, we can press the V and H keys to ensure that the part is dead center inside the fuel tank. This will also be a good time to set the control authority to maximum and to deactivate the pitch and roll. Actually, before we have the nose going, we'd better just attach the front landing gear. Next up, we're going to use the open node at the back of the rear fuel tank to just attach a shock cone intake. This is the only part in the design that's purely for aesthetics. That is, it doesn't really serve any useful function. As you can see, I've moved the shock cone intake as far forward as I can without the rear fuel tank kind of poking through it. And we also want to do the same with the rudder. We want to have it just far enough in so it doesn't poke through the shock cone intake. Okay, now we've got all our ingredients, we can start putting this plane together. With the advanced canards, we just want to move them in so we can get that grey stripe perfectly lined up with the fuel tank and the engine. With all of my designs, I try to have each part perform multiple roles. So the advanced canards, for instance, they act as the main lifting surfaces. They also act as the pitch and roll for the craft. Even the refueling port, it tells you which way the craft is facing, which way is up, which, let's be honest, is pretty handy.
Now the front lifting surfaces look kind of big compared to the rest of the plane, but what we can do by setting the snapping to 5 degrees is just tweak them around and make them a bit more compact and better looking. Again, there's no real performance gains to this, it's just makes it look better. The craft is pretty much there now, we just need to sort out the cockpit. So we need to attach 2 reaction wheels, 2 batteries, a solar panel if you like, and of course the command seat. I forgot to mention this earlier, but you guys should also have a copy of RCS Build Aid installed, as it makes the design process a lot easier, as we'll see a bit later on. When you're mounting parts like this in the materials bay, the occlusion, I guess, hitbox is quite generous, so you can afford to put the parts reasonably far out. I should have added these earlier, but we're also going to need a basic pair of fins at the rear of the craft, otherwise the centre of lift is going to be too far forwards and it'll make the plane uncontrollable. Generally you want the centre of lift just behind the centre of mass. If it goes past it, then your plane will just want to nosedive into the ground. I think we're about 90% there now. We just want to start going around and doing a wee tidy up. Really get those parts looking good. As anyone that's seen my previous tutorials will know, I'm really obsessive about balance. I try to engineer all my plane designs so that regardless of the amount of fuel, the centre of mass doesn't move. Before we start tweaking the balance, I'm just going to get those basic fins in place and get the centre of lift sorted. We don't want to put the basic fins right at the edge of the shock intake, otherwise they can get caught by the wash from the engines, which isn't a good thing. A little trick I use to help tweak the balance is actually to add a liquid fuel tank to the refueling port. By adjusting the amount of fuel in the tank, it makes it a bit easier to line up the fully fueled and empty icons, or indicators rather, from RCS Build Aid. By moving the landing gear backwards and forwards, we can just tweak the balance and get everything perfectly lined up. So regardless of how much fuel the craft has, the centre of lift and the centre of mass won't budge an inch. Okay, that's looking about right, so let's just sort out the rear control surfaces and get them ready to go. We just want to disable the yaw for obvious reasons, and we also want to set the authority limiter to -120. I'm just going to surface attach a probe core as it makes the testing process faster. We're almost ready to go. The last thing we want to do is just sort out the action groups. We're ready for test flight now, but before we do, let's just check in with our round the world adventure. We've reached the halfway point now and things are looking good. We've got plenty of fuel. We've got about 90 units left, and as long as we've got more than 80, we're fine. You have to bear in mind that the further we fly, the lighter the craft is getting, which means the pitch is going to reduce, and with less pitch comes less drag, which means more speed and less fuel burnt. So yes, unless we get a serious engine failure or we hit some bad weather, I think we're in the clear. We're just approaching the Space Center now, and we've got plenty of fuel to spare, no dramas there. As we approach, I'm just going to reactivate the control surfaces and take over command from the AI. Another very useful feature of Pilot Assist is the speed limiter. The Storm's got a very efficient airframe, so if you're using the afterburner at high altitude, you can go so fast you actually exceed the maximum speed of the jet. So using the speed limiter, you can keep the aircraft within those limits and stop the jet sort of burning out or shutting down. Speaking of which, seeing as we've got so much fuel left over, we may as well activate the afterburner and just get home that little bit quicker. Just while I've got you here, I just want to say a big thank you for all your guys' love and support. I want to welcome all the new subscribers that have joined the channel recently, and yeah, I just hope you continue to enjoy my designs and my videos. Thank you. Mach 3 is probably a wee bit fast for landing, so I'm just going to cut the engine in a minute and we're just going to glide in. We're still tootling along pretty quickly, so I'm just going to use the landing gear and cockpit doors to just help slow the plane down. With the cockpit doors, when you open them, you expose all the reaction wheels, the kerbal, the command seat. You expose all of that drag, and it helps slow the craft down very quickly. Obviously, you don't really want to do it, at stupidly high speeds, otherwise you'll just turn your kerbal inside out. We're just aiming for a touchdown speed of between 50 to 100 meters per second. And there we are, folks, round the world on 160 units of fuel. let's just get back to our test plane and see how she does. By pressing Alt and F12 we can get into the debug menu, and inside the aero section you can actually get it to display the aero data inside the action menu. This is quite handy for just double checking that everything's being occluded properly inside the cockpit, and we don't want anything that's sticking out too far and so producing drag. There's a couple of things I forgot to do in the editor which we can do now. One is to disable steering on the rear wheels. The other is to actually limit the engine gimbal to 50%, otherwise you can get some clipping issues with the shock cone and it makes the plane too manoeuvrable. Alright, let's throttle up and see how she flies. I can see straight away I didn't get the transition quite right between the engine and the shock cone intake, so that's something I'm going to have to tweak, and I'm sure there's going to be more things that pop up as well. It's just one of those things, you know, you just have to keep tweaking that design until it's perfect. For first test flight, it's not too bad. The handling's pretty good, still needs a wee bit of work, but yeah, it's flying pretty well. I'm just going to fly over to the island airstrip, and once I've landed there I think we can call it a day. While we're over the water, I'm just going to set the control authority to 150, and I just want to show you guys why I usually set it to 120. If you're really hammering along at Mach 3, you can get these quite bad control oscillations from the SAS, so I'll just see if I can do one of those now to demonstrate. Anyway, if you set it to 120, you don't seem to get so many of those control oscillations, and if you do come across them, you can actually press F to temporarily disable the SAS, which fixes it, or if you're really hammering along beyond Mach 3, you can actually disable the SAS entirely. One final thing I should probably mention about the Storm is that if you hammer the afterburner too much at low level, you can actually overcook the basic fins, and if that happens, obviously the centre of lift goes forward and it doesn't do the handling any favours. So yeah, just don't go too hard at low level for too long. Think of it as a safety feature. Anyway guys, hopefully I've covered everything in this tutorial. If I've missed something or you have any extra questions, please hit me up in the comment section and I shall do my best to answer. Apart from that, peace and love to you all, and I look forward to making you another video next month. Take care.